Hello friends, in this video I'll present to you the case study of startup called Wework. We will understand why Wework failed. So let's dive in. Wework started in year 2010. Let's understand what problem was Wework trying to solve. So we know that businesses, startups and freelancers need comfortable space to work with productivity. Now, this is very obvious. Freelancers can't always work from their home because certainly there is some disturbance in home. And businesses and startups have teams that need to collaborate together and work. And so, a comfortable space is needed where businesses can work with productivity. And for this, businesses and startups don't have enough funds that they could literally buy and own a property. So, in that case, the only solution these businesses, startups, and freelancers have is to take a property on rent. So, this was the exact problem that was solved by Wework. Wework provided co working spaces for businesses as well as individuals. Understand now that this was a genuine problem, right? But why did WeWork fail is due to their execution and something extraordinary that the founder of WeWork did. First, let's have a look at the founders of WeWork. So, Adam Newman and Miguel McAlev are the founders of WeWork. Now, keep an eye on this man, Adam Newman, as I go forward. This is the man who was the CEO of Wework, and this is the man from which you have to learn all the things that you should not do in a startup. I can literally go on and tell that this man, Adam Newman, is literally the worst CEO of all times. Trust me, I will explain it to you later that why do I say so. So let's first understand the business model of WeWork. So WeWork's business model is very simple. They used to lease rental properties from landlords and then sublease them to freelancers, remote workers, startups, and companies. So basically, WeWork generally selected high-end commercial properties for its products and renovated it from top to bottom. They made the offices look so beautiful that everyone would love to work at those offices. This clearly had the fixed cost of rent but also had variable cost. Like WeWork had to bear the cost of staff, beverages, cleaning, internet, air conditioning, electricity, security, etc. WeWork's pricing model was very flexible and it largely depended on the type of product that you choose. Freelancers had dedicated desks, and for businesses and startups, private office, and conference rooms were made. So, WeWork also ran a membership program which allowed its members to access WeWork properties from across the globe. So, this is how simple the business model of WeWork was. That is, basically rent a real estate, transform the entire real estate, and manage end to end operations. Let's now have a look at some data related to WeWork. But before that, understand that WeWork expanded into 35 countries. This just shows us that how rapidly the startup focused on expansion. For some data, in 2018, revenue of WeWork was $1.8 billion dollars and their loss was $1.6 billion. Dollars. Now, looking at these figures, you might feel that this is some genuine numbers, right? That this is a decent number and company is growing like good and having some losses, okay. And it could be profitable in the near future. But that was not the case. In fact, their expected revenue was $4 billion, but the lease commitment was $40 billion. So understand this. What do I mean by lease commitment? It is the rent amount that WeWork has to pay to the landowners, to the building owners for renting the properties to WeWork. So that amount was $40 billion and their expected revenue was $4 billion. That is one tenth of amount that they had to pay. So clearly there was no chance of profitability in such a model. So in order to expand the startup, WeWork raised total funding of $21 billion from SoftBank, which is a very well-known venture capital fund in the world. After 2 years, WeWork filed for IPO and at valuation of $47 billion. Unfortunately, their IPO got rejected. and I will explain it to you why it got rejected. And the company valuation dropped at $7 billion. WeWork kept on making losses and profitability was out of the dictionary. Now let's understand the reasons why WeWork failed. Okay, so the first reason is power misuse by CEO. Now the CEO of WeWork, Adam Newman, bought himself 5 expensive houses and a private jet worth $60 million. WeWork was clearly not profitable startup, but still the founder Adam Newman did such huge expenses. And do you know something shocking about this? These expenses were done using investors' money. Now, just imagine this is literally a scam and this is literally a theft from your investors. You are using your investors' money to for your personal expenses and that too such huge expenses. Investors give you money so that you could grow your business and give them a specific amount of return. But here the case was exactly opposite. That is why I named him the worst CEO of all time at the start of this video. Along with that, Adam Newman trademarked the V tag from the word WeWork. Now, you may think, what is so surprising about that? If he trademarked, then what is the problem? The problem is when the company wanted to expand into another markets, the investors had to buy this trademark from Adam at price of $5.9 million. Now, this is again a scam. Why would a founder trademark his own logo so that his own investors had to purchase this logo trademark from him? This was again a scam. You should never trademark your own name and logo. It is done to protect your company and not to, take more money from investors. Later, he realizes his mistake and he refunds the money. But now you may wonder how this guy, Adam Newman, was allowed to take such stupid decisions. So this is because Adam had voting rights in ratio 1 is to 20. That is, one voting share of Adam was equivalent to voting shares of 20 stakeholders in the company. And this way, Adam had complete control over the company. Now, if you remember from the case study of housing.com, I told you that you should have voting shares because you should have a control over your company. Now, why did I say so? I told you to have voting shares so that when you want to make some critical decision in your company, like for example, if you want to acquire a new company, then investors don't oppose your decision. That is why I told you to have power over your company. But in this case, this was complete power misuse. He literally went on to do personal expenses, and this was the main reason why their IPO got rejected. Okay. Now, the second thing that I want to discuss is aggressive non vertical expansion. WeWork expanded in various non-vertical segments like WeGrow, which was a school, and WeLive, which was a living space. So, despite they were on heavy losses, still he expanded into new categories. Now, there is no sense of starting new businesses when your primary business itself is bleeding cash. Now, this is a self explanatory point and needs no more explanation. Clearly, if your primary business is not doing good, how can you even think of expanding into more sectors? The third reason why they failed was poor unit economics, and I would rather say poor positioning. Why so? Because WeWork positioned itself as a deluxe co-working space. Okay. Now understand this that startups and freelancers are someone who have just started. Startups don't have funds to pay this kind of expensive price just for space. So, due to this reason, the occupancy rate of WeWork was never 100%. The offices were never fully occupied. Occupancy rate was literally 70 to 80%. And clearly, less occupancy rate cost them huge money because obviously, if there are some spaces which are not occupied, they are still causing you rent, right? You still have to pay the rent to the landowners. So, less occupancy rate was one of the main reasons why profit could not be made by WeWork. Now, the fourth reason is something very important to understand, and literally, you should analyze this point for your startup as well, or something that you will start in your future. Understand this. A startup like WeWork can never be profitable because A company that has variable cost involved can never keep control on their cost. What do I mean by this? For example, if a social media company like Facebook or Instagram acquired 1 million new users, then their office rent or salary they pay to their employees is not going to, increase drastically. It is almost going to be constant, right? Because this company have fixed cost, that is a fixed server cost, fixed rent cost, etc. But if WeWork wants to acquire new users, it had to pay for rents in advance. Understand this. And also it had to, spend on variable things, on variable cost like internet, electricity, security, etc. So when variable costs are involved, gaining profitability is not possible. So in your startup, analyze what are the fixed cost and what are the variable cost. Variable costs are the cost that you have to pay even if you have not acquired your users, right? So understand these things because these are literally the things that can make or break your company. And that is why the model of WeWork could never be profitable. Now let's understand how it all ended. So finally, SoftBank decided to remove Adam from the company, and Adam demanded the following things for exit. Adam literally went on to demand $1 billion exit package. He also demanded to sell his shares worth $1 billion to SoftBank. He also demanded $185 million as consulting fees for last 4 years. Now understand this. This is funny as well as disgusting at the same time. So basically, a CEO that cost $2 billion of loss for the company in a year is being paid $2 billion simply for him to exit. Such shameless this CEO was. And this was the complete misuse of powers this guy did. I mean, this is literally disgusting. You have to understand that the right reasons that you are starting a business. You need to start a startup so that you solve people's problems. You need to start up because you are passionate about solving problems. You need to start a startup because you love creating impact. Obviously, you are going to create good wealth if you are, doing your work truthfully and doing your work very passionately. That is something, wealth is a byproduct. But this guy literally went on to spoil his investors' money and demanded such huge money for just exiting the company. Understand how shameless this CEO was. So let's now look at learnings which you should reflect upon from this case study. So even after you get funding, being frugal is extremely important. You need to spend your money wisely. Second thing is, once you start your startup, first make it profitable and then expand into different markets. Otherwise, failure is obviously more near than you think. Here, in case of WeWork, their primary business of co working spaces was not profitable. Still, they choose to expand into new markets, like they introduced WeGrow, which was school market. So why would you even go into new market when your primary business itself is not profitable? Don't make this mistake. Third learning is that always keep your expenses and company's expenses different. Hundreds of startups have failed when a CEO starts spending for himself using investors' money. Now, this is the most critical point of this video. Never make a single personal expense from company's bank account. Why am I saying so? Because if you get into that habit and start making huge expenses from your company's bank account, once a situation comes when you are filing for your IPO, there are audits being carried. Okay, audits are done to check whether all the expenses that have been done from investors' money are used for businesses only. If it is found at any point that you were using your personal, you were using investors' money for your personal expenses, your IPO will definitely get rejected, and this will cause a lot of legal problems for you. Don't do this mistake. Never ever do this mistake. The last learning that I want to give you is, if you have this thought process that let's just first get customers and then we shall think about profit, you are surely going to fail. Mark my words, you are surely going to fail. You should have the plan of profitability from day one. You should have a strong business plan from day one. This thought process will definitely lead to failure because then you will never know that how you will get to profitability. Things will keep on getting complex and complex. So this were the key learnings from case study of Wework. I hope you learned something valuable. See you in the next one.